It was marketed as a horror film, but what emerged felt more like a warning disguised as entertainment. When The Omen premiered in 1976, audiences braced for a fictional story about the rise of the Antichrist. They got that, but they got something else, too. A chilling sense that what unfolded on screen had bled into the real world. A pattern of tragedies, eerie coincidences, and unsettling parallels that refused to be written off as mere chance. Before the cameras rolled, darkness had already gathered. Gregory Peck, the film's lead, was grieving the suicide of his son. His flight to London was struck by lightning midair. Another flight, originally booked for the same crew, crashed. A zookeeper, helping with a scene, was mauled to death. A special effects artist who crafted a decapitation sequence would later witness the same death in real life. Phone calls with no caller. Audio tapes that recorded whispers never spoken. A child actor too convincing for comfort. These weren't just production challenges. They were signs, warnings, echoes of a narrative trying to assert itself in the real world. Was it a string of misfortunes amplified by fear and imagination? Or did The Omen tap into something primal, something that didn't want to be filmed? What happens when a film about evil starts to invite it? These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Omen, 1976. A film that wasn't merely haunted by its content, but perhaps marked by what it awakened. Fact 1. The flight that was never supposed to land. Gregory Peck boarded the plane with grief in his chest and a script in his hand. His son had died just months earlier by suicide. Accepting a role as a father who suspects his child might be the embodiment of evil wasn't a casual decision. It was personal, maybe too personal. Then the flight was struck by lightning. Not a flash in the distance, a direct hit. The fuselage shuddered, lights dimmed, passengers screamed. Flight attendants later described it as the kind of turbulence that makes you feel like the air is trying to reject you. The plane landed, shaken but intact. But that wasn't the end of the story. Another plane originally reserved for part of the film crew crashed shortly after takeoff the same day. Everyone on board died. Only a last-minute scheduling change kept the crew off that flight. A week later, a different flight, carrying one of the producers, was struck by lightning. Again, that's 3 aircraft, all tied to the same film, all marked by violent weather. At what point do weather patterns stop being random? And if the sky really doesn't care what we do down here, why did it keep reaching down? Was it coincidence? Or was something in the air trying to deliver a message the studio wouldn't listen to? Fact 2. The death scene that crossed over. John Richardson was no stranger to gore. As a veteran special effects artist, he'd made death look real dozens of times. But nothing he worked on was as shockingly lifelike or as eerily prophetic as the infamous decapitation scene in The Omen. The effect was technical perfection. A pane of glass slides through a man's neck. His head spins through the air in slow motion. The scene is grotesque, hypnotic, unforgettable. But what happened later was worse. Richardson, while working on another film in the Netherlands, was driving with his assistant and girlfriend. Their car veered off the road. He survived the crash. She didn't. Her head was cleanly severed by a metal signpost. When Richardson crawled from the wreckage, he saw the nearest sign, Omen, 66.6 kilometers. The number, the town, the method, the horror. He never spoke publicly about what that moment did to him, but those close to him say he changed afterward, became quieter, more withdrawn. He never staged another death scene so elaborate again. Some believe it was a tragic coincidence. Others think it was something else entirely. When you build death frame by frame, does it learn your name? Fact 3. The animals that knew Damien wasn't acting. In The Omen, animals react violently to Damien. But during filming, they weren't acting, and neither were the humans. The safari park scene called for baboons to swarm the car in which Damien and his mother ride. The handlers needed the monkeys to appear truly aggressive. Their solution? Place a live baboon in the backseat hidden under a blanket. The troop went berserk, screaming, clawing, slamming against the glass with such force the vehicle rocked on its tires. The actress playing Damien's mother, Lee Remick, was supposed to look terrified. She didn't need to act. She begged to stop filming. But what disturbed the crew wasn't just the chaos, it was Damien. The young actor, Harvey Stevens, sat perfectly still, smiling. Days later, tragedy struck the same animal facility. A lion broke through its enclosure. The same handler who helped stage the baboon scene was killed instantly. A single strike. The incident was written off as freak behavior, but the handlers who remained refused to let Damien near any animal again. And the question that lingered wasn't about the monkeys or the lion. It was about the boy. What did those animals sense that the cameras couldn't see? And why did they all react to him the same way? Fact 4. The man in black who knew too much. He didn't sign in. He wasn't on the call sheet. He wasn't even supposed to be in the country, but he came. During early stages of production, as location scouting wrapped and contracts were being finalized, a man appeared outside the production trailer at Shepperton Studios, middle-aged, pale, dressed in black, collar high. He introduced himself to a junior producer as Father Brennan, not the actor, not the character. A real priest or so, he claimed. He wasn't angry, he wasn't theatrical. He was quiet, measured, and terrified. He said the script, especially the third act, was dangerous, that the film's central theme wasn't fiction, that depicting Damien on screen could draw attention, and not the kind that comes from audiences. The man left no card, no contact, no record. Church officials later denied knowing him. Security footage from the studio's front gate was mysteriously lost from that day. Weeks later, lightning struck Peck's plane. Then came the stunt failures. Then came the deaths. Only one crew member remembered what the man said just before he walked away. Some stories are not meant to be told. Others are meant to be repeated. So who was he warning, the filmmakers or the thing watching them work? Fact 5. The stuntman who fell further than physics allowed. Controlled chaos is a stuntman's job. The impalement scene in The Omen required one. A character falls from a window and lands perfectly on a decorative spike. The stunt had been rehearsed multiple times. Precision rigging, dual cables, redundant safety lines. On take day, something changed. The harness disengaged mid-fall. The stuntman dropped faster and farther than physics predicted. He missed his mark by inches, narrowly avoiding real injury. Everyone rushed in. He was shaken but alive. But when they reviewed the footage, a second anomaly appeared. In 3 frames, just before the fall, there was a distortion, something like a shadow passing through the lens. Too large and too high to be a crew member. The scene made it into the final cut. No one ever explained the failure. The riggers were cleared. The cable wasn't faulty. The stuntman never performed again. He later told a friend, "It felt like something wanted me to fall harder. Like I'd interrupted something." Did the harness fail? Or did some presence insist on one more fall than the script required? Fact 6. The score that felt like a summoning. It wasn't music. It was a ritual in disguise. When Jerry Goldsmith began composing the Omen score, he chose not to use the typical horror palette, no screeching violins, no sudden stabs of sound. Instead, he built a choral mass in Latin, slow, hypnotic, drenched in reverence and dread. Ave Satani. Translated, the title means Hail Satan. The lyrics included reversed prayers, calls for blood, and invocations that some Latin scholars later described as dangerously authentic. Goldsmith said he wanted the music to feel ancient, like it had been written long before the movie. When it won the Academy Award, he accepted graciously, but refused to ever reuse the piece, or even listen to it again. Stranger still were the stories from the recording sessions. Multiple choir members complained of headaches, nausea, and strange dreams after the takes. One singer fainted during rehearsal while holding a note. When she woke up, she reportedly whispered, "He likes it." Some dismissed it as suggestion. Power of suggestion, mass hysteria, artistic intensity. But the master tapes once had an extra vocal layer no one recorded, low, guttural, never identified. So, did Goldsmith write the music? Or did something else write through him? Fact 7. The boy who became Damien before the cameras rolled. Most child actors bring charm. He brought silence. Harvey Stevens was just 4 years old when he auditioned for The Omen. No lines, no stage experience, just a face and an instinct. Director Richard Donner asked him to throw a tantrum. He didn't fake it. He attacked, full force, screamed, punched Donner in the face, bit his arm. Everyone in the room froze. Donner stood up and said, "We found Damien." What followed during production only deepened the unease. Stevens rarely needed multiple takes. He stared too long, smiled at the wrong moments. Once, during a lunch break, he was found alone on set, humming the film's theme, though no one had played it that day. Cast and crew whispered that he seemed to know when cameras were rolling, even without cue. In the final shot, where Damien turns and smiles at the audience, he wasn't directed to do that. He simply did. Decades later, Stevens largely disappeared from the public eye. Then in 2016, he made headlines arrested for assault in a road rage incident. The photos showed a face older, but with the same unsettling grin. So was it method acting, childlike mimicry, or had he simply stepped into a role that never really left him? And if a performance is pretending, why did he never once seem to pretend? Fact 8. The memo that tried to stop the film and failed. Studios cancel films all the time, but not usually because they're scared. Midway through production, 20th Century Fox executives began compiling internal reports. A lead actor's flight struck by lightning, a hotel fire during location scouting, an animal trainer killed, a stunt gone wrong. Then came the memo, marked urgent, halt production pending, risk review. It circulated quietly among legal and financial teams. It wasn't about money, it was about a pattern, too many anomalies in too little time. One executive wrote, "If these incidents continue, we risk more than liability. We risk belief." The memo was never acted on. Why? Because the marketing department saw opportunity. They pitched a new strategy: embrace the curse, lean into the chaos, let audiences feel the unease before they even saw the film. The memo was buried. The production continued, but insurance premiums skyrocketed. Several crew members quietly left, and Fox moved to limit behind-the-scenes access. Something about the project had shifted from cautious spectacle to calculated superstition. So was the fear internal or instinctual? And when a studio tries to shut something down, what force convinces them to keep going? 9. The call that came from inside the cut. Post-production is supposed to be the quiet phase, but not for the Omen. One night, an assistant editor stayed late, reviewing audio from a party scene. As he isolated ambient sound, he heard breathing, faint, uneven, not part of the take. Then the phone rang. He answered. No one spoke. Then a whisper, "He is coming." He hung up. It rang again. Same voice. Same phrase. The call trace showed no origin. The number matched the studio's internal extension system, but no one else had access that night. In the following weeks, more anomalies surfaced. Unexplained voices layered into tracks, static where there should have been silence, a faint Latin chant that wasn't part of any recorded audio file. When confronted, the lead sound engineer reportedly said, "We recorded more than the film." The assistant editor never came back. So if a film captures sound, what else might it trap, unintentionally? And more importantly, can it still listen? Fact 10. The decapitation that never looked fake enough. It was supposed to be the most theatrical death in the film. A sheet of glass slides off the back of a truck, cuts clean through a man's neck, and sends his head spinning in midair. No CGI, no digital touch-ups, just precision practical effects, slow-motion artistry, and a brutal sound cue. The scene became iconic, but something about it made people uncomfortable. Not the gore, but the expression. The dummy head didn't look still. It looked conscious. In slow motion, the eyes seemed to follow the camera, the jaw tensed. It blinked or something very much like it. The special effects team insisted they had used no facial mechanics, no servo motors, no subtle tricks. Weeks after the scene was shot, a crew member who had helped rig the decapitation was found dead in his apartment. His body positioned eerily like the shot, head twisted, jaw agape, blood pooling in a straight line across the floor, no signs of struggle, no clear cause. Police called it a medical event. The production called it nothing. But the reel remained, untouched, unedited, perfect. And when they tried to replicate the decapitation style for another film the following year, they couldn't. It never looked as real or as alive. So, was that moment on screen pure cinematic magic? Or something that briefly blurred the line between acting and Omen? Fact 11. The scene too blasphemous to survive. There's a scene that no one has ever seen, but everyone involved remembers. It was written in early drafts. Damien is taken to a cathedral. The priest speaks Latin over him. Damien doesn't respond. He simply looks up at the stained glass ceiling, then it explodes inward. A visual metaphor. The sacred space shattered by the presence of something not born of God. The scene was storyboarded, scheduled, lit, then pulled without explanation. Officially, budget constraints. Unofficially, the studio received a direct warning from representatives of the Catholic Church, not through lawsuits or protests, through a conversation behind closed doors. The request, "You've gone far enough, don't go further." What makes the story eerie is that every attempt to film or even sketch the sequence resulted in failure. Cameras jammed, lights blew, storyboard artists developed tremors in their drawing hands. One refused to continue and later mailed back his designs, covered in scratches. Years later, that scene was referenced in a theology lecture titled, "Images That Should Not Be Made." No one explained how the professor had the original draft. So was it censorship or a warning taken just in time? Fact 12. The director who couldn't leave the set behind. Richard Donner was not a man given to superstition. As the director of The Omen, he approached every strange occurrence with a filmmaker's eye. Missed cues, technical failures, stress-related mistakes. He didn't flinch when lightning struck a plane, or when animals refused to perform, or when a priest warned him to stop, until he got home. After returning to Los Angeles, Donner began noticing flickers, not on screen, but in his own house. Lights dimmed in his office, but nowhere else. A shadow in the reflection of his window that didn't match his own movement. Then the phone rang. Not his cell, not his landline. A rotary phone he hadn't used in years, still plugged in behind a shelf. It rang once. He picked it up. Static. Then a voice. Latin. A phrase from the film's choral score. He unplugged the phone. It rang again the next night. Donner never publicly acknowledged the incident. But in a later interview, when asked if he believed in curses, he paused and said, "I don't know if we brought something back with us, or if we just woke it up. And if a film ends in theaters but something follows the director home, was it really fiction to begin with?" Fact 13. The camera refused to film and the cameraman agreed. Gil Taylor had filmed war, space battles, and Beatlemania, but he had never refused to roll camera until The Omen. During preparation for a high-angle shot of Damien standing outside the church, Taylor adjusted the lens, checked the frame, and stepped away. He looked at the director and said, simply, "I won't shoot this boy from above." Not because of lighting, not because of setup, because of something else. No one pressed him. A second unit took over. But when the footage was reviewed, something strange emerged. 3 reels were blank, not overexposed, not damaged, just empty, blackness, where a child should have been. Taylor left the project soon after, citing creative exhaustion. But a colleague later recalled Taylor had confided in him. "You know how some faces don't belong on film? His didn't belong in this world." Years later, in interviews about Star Wars, Taylor never once mentioned The Omen, as if it had been erased from his resume and perhaps from his comfort zone. Was he protecting his reputation? Or trying to forget something the camera saw before he did? Fact 14. The lunar pattern no one could explain. The first day of shooting happened to fall on a full moon. No one thought much of it until someone realized the next major sequence also took place under a full moon, and the next. And the next. By the time production wrapped, a disturbing pattern had emerged. Every major death scene on screen or off had occurred during or within hours of a full moon. The baboon attack, the lightning strike on Gregory Peck's plane, the fatal lion mauling, even the stunt accident that nearly killed a crew member. Someone mapped it. A production assistant cross-referenced every event with lunar data. It matched perfectly. 6 deaths, 6 full moons. In a shooting schedule that had shifted multiple times, they showed the chart to the director. He folded it quietly and never spoke of it again. The crew joked, called it the silver calendar, but no one laughed during night shoots anymore. And every full moon thereafter, several key staff would quietly leave set early. So, was it natural rhythm? Or were they syncing with something older, something waiting? If the moon controls tides, sleep, and blood, what else might it govern? Silently, while the camera rolls. Fact 15. The lawsuit that no one ever filed but everyone remembered. In 1977, rumors spread of a lawsuit filed against The Omen, not from another studio, not from a defamed actor, from a religious group. The claim? That the film was more than entertainment, that it was spiritual disinformation, masked as fiction. The wording was specific, almost surgical, but when journalists tried to verify the case, they found nothing. No docket number, no court record, no press release. The group based in Chicago had dissolved by the time anyone could reach them. Their office was empty, their name erased from non-profit registries. Still, whispers remained. A legal intern at 20th Century Fox leaked part of a memo referencing the complaint. The quote, "If this reaches discovery, we'll have to explain too much." Explain what? No one answered. The studio denied the document existed, but the intern stood by her story. She left law shortly after. To this day, the alleged lawsuit is treated as urban legend, but some archivists insist a redacted file still exists deep within Fox's vaults, untitled, sealed, and stamped. Do not access without legal counsel. So what did someone once try to warn us about, and who decided we shouldn't hear it? Fact 16. The fire that didn't start in the fireplace. Hotels are places where stories rest between checkouts. But one night, the Omen production nearly left theirs in ashes. Several cast and crew were staying at a countryside inn just outside Guildford. It was cozy, creaky, and on the surface, unremarkable. After a long day of shooting, a few team members gathered in the lounge, passing time by reading lines aloud from an early version of the script. One line stuck out. "He was born in fire, and so he shall return to it." A joke was made. Laughter. Then the fire in the hearth erupted. Not flared, erupted. A column of flame shot out, catching the drapes. Within minutes, the room was ablaze. Guests escaped. The inn suffered major damage. Investigators blamed a blocked flue, but those who were there insist it wasn't mechanical. It was timed, as if the fire had heard something that called it forward. The most unsettling detail? That line about fire was cut from the final script weeks before. So how did it return that night? Out loud, just once. Do some words linger, waiting to be spoken again? And what listens when we read from scripts no one approved? Fact 17. The Bible that wasn't in the script but ended up on an altar. Props go missing. It happens. But when the production designed Damien Bible vanished from set, no one thought much of it. Just another misplaced item. The book had been created for a background shot, a faux Bible with dark Latin passages hinting at ancient evil. The kind of thing only attentive viewers would catch, until it reappeared, not in storage, not in Lost and Found, on a real altar, in a real church, during Sunday service. The priest preparing the Mass found it open to a bookmarked page. The passage, purely fictional, read, "He shall speak not until the silence is complete." He closed it, locked the church, called the studio. They collected the book. How it got there remains unexplained. No one had been inside the church since Friday. The doors were locked, no windows broken, no alarms triggered. The production burned the book afterward, or claimed to, but a blurry photo still circulates online of the book on the altar, the text glowing slightly under a beam of morning light. Was it a prank? A misplaced prop? Or did something decide that it, too, had a sermon to give? Fact 18. The psychiatrist who wouldn't name the disorder. To lend authenticity to Damien's behavior, the writers of The Omen consulted a child psychologist. They asked him to review the character not as a narrative device, but as if he were real. What condition would explain such behavior? The doctor returned with no diagnosis. He simply said, "What you've written doesn't fit within any known framework. It isn't psychosis, it isn't dissociation. It's too precise, too engineered." He refused credit, declined compensation, and later asked that all references to his involvement be erased from internal memos. What spooked him, reportedly, was Damien's ability to manipulate outcomes without direct action. Passive malevolence. A child who did nothing, yet everything around him broke. The writers kept some of the doctor's notes. They later admitted that the coldest, most clinical behaviors in Damien's final version came directly from those files. So, what did the psychiatrist really see in those pages? And if a child doesn't fit into any known disorder, what does that make him? Fact 19. The voice that was never recorded but still heard. Late one night, inside a post-production booth lit only by the glow of waveforms, an assistant editor queued up a party scene. He muted everything but one channel, ambient audio. Something whispered. He paused, rewound, played it again. Nothing. He soloed the track a third time, and there it was. A faint voice. Not an actor, not background noise, not listed in the audio log. A woman's voice, barely audible, speaking in Latin. He watches from within. He called in the sound supervisor. They pulled the raw tapes. Nothing. The waveform wasn't there anymore. Later that week, a file appeared in the server. No name, no extension, just 1.6 seconds of silence followed by that same whisper, clearer, slower, almost expectant. The file was deleted. Then it returned. Same timestamp, same data. The assistant editor left the project soon after. No official explanation. When asked about it years later, the supervisor said, "There are things you capture accidentally, but some things capture you." So if film holds light and sound, what holds the space between them? Fact 20. The final smile no one called for. The ending was always meant to be unsettling. Damien, standing at a funeral, turns to the camera and smiles, cold, empty, knowing. But here's the part most people don't know. No one called action. The crew was setting up. The camera was rolling for exposure tests. No lights were adjusted, no cues given. Harvey Stevens, 4 years old, wasn't even told they were filming. He just turned, slowly, looked directly at the lens, and smiled. The smile was too perfect. Not performative, not childlike, just quiet. When asked afterward what made him do it, Harvey shrugged. He said he felt like someone behind the camera was telling him without words. The footage was checked, no audio. But the camera logs showed a timecode mismatch, 1 second of corrupted metadata just before the smile. It made the final cut. Of course it did. How could they not include it? But some on set never forgot the chill that ran through the room when it happened. So who directed the final moment if no one in the room was in control? Bonus fact, the name that was already written in stone. They didn't choose the name Damien, they found it. During an early location scout in Italy, a crew member wandered off the path near a rural chapel. He stumbled upon a forgotten graveyard, overgrown and quiet. One headstone stood out, carved into its face. Damianus, born beneath the eclipse, died unnamed. The grave was dated nearly 2 centuries prior. He took a photo, showed it to the production designer. Within the week, the script was changed. The child would no longer be named Damien. He would be Damien. But when they returned to that spot later in the shoot, the headstone was gone. No sign it had ever existed. Locals denied the graveyard had ever extended into that patch of woods. Yet the photo remained, and in it, a hairline fracture runs through the stone, slicing directly through the name like something had tried to erase it too late. So was the name an invention, or a memory waiting to be remembered again? Some films entertain, others disturb. The Omen seemed to reach beyond both, into something ancient, something watching, something waiting. So what do you think? Was the curse carefully crafted to build legend? Or did the legend begin long before the cameras arrived? Which fact unsettled you most, and what truth do you think lies beneath the frame? Tell us in the comments. And tell us, which film should we look into next?